Hi, welcome to Naroff Notes. I'm Tim Sustak. Again with us today is our economic consultant, Joel Naroff. Joel, welcome back.
Thanks, Tim. Pleasure being here. Look forward to discussing what's happening with the Fed.
Right, and that certainly has been the big news of late. That is that the Fed took a pass in the September meeting and decided to not to change rates. And, that maybe surprised some, maybe didn't surprise some. But I guess the surprise of it all was how they tried to explain that themselves. And that is to say that, woes in the world economy, particularly China, could weigh on economic growth going forward. And, what's your take on all that, Joel? They've since tried to backpedal on some of that. Kind of tells you that they weren't so sure about what they said. What do you think?
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right, Tim. Seems that they've become the gang that can't communicate straight. Going into the meeting, the assumption was they'd probably raise rates. The economy was clearly strong enough to support it. We're seeing that with recent data where growth was nearly 4% in the spring. It's solid now in the summer. Consumption is really good. Consumers are buying vehicles like crazy. Yet the Fed goes out there and out of the clear blue raises the issue of international concerns, especially China. And what confused everybody is how are they going to determine when conditions in China or the developing nations are good enough that they get the all clear? There's no benchmarks, there's no data. We know the Chinese numbers are frequently manipulated and we really can't trust them that much. So they created massive confusion. As a result of that confusion, we see all the craziness that's going on in the equity markets. They've been up, they've been down. And when the Fed talks about the idea that they want to see some of the markets settle down, they themselves have to get rid of some of the uncertainty. And one way to do it is by raising rates. But really, I think they're trying to get on the same page. They're trying to let everybody know that they, do have a plan in place. Chair Yellen, Fed President, New York Fed President Dudley are out there saying, hey, 13 of us said it's going to go up by the end of the year, 13 out of 17. Chair Yellen said that she's one of them, Dudley's one of them. That seems to be an indication that they're ready to move, especially when you're given the fact that New York Fed President Dudley was the one that said he wasn't so certain that the data was compelling anymore enough to raise rates before the September meeting. Now he seems to be back on board. We got to listen to what he says. So there's some confusion, but I think they're still moving towards a rate hike.
All right, and they've got two more chances to do it in 15, and as you said, seem to indicate that majority are on board for an increase before the end of the year. And as you said, Chairman Yellen certainly puts herself in that group. No conference, press conference in October. There is one in December. What do you think? Is it October or December or sometime in 16 now?
This is a group that seems to come up to the edge of a decision and decides that they're not yet able to make it. But as you pointed out, there's no press conference after the October meeting. The markets don't expect them to move at the October meeting, so I would be surprised if they did it then. They bought themselves the time. They can see a couple of more months of world data. They can see a couple of more employment reports. They can get a whole lot of other information. And if it's still as good as I think it is, and inflation begins to firm even just a touch, December still looks like the time to do it. But the key point to keep in mind is whether it's October, December, or sometime in early 2016, they've made it clear they're not going to move every meeting. They're not going to move rapidly. They'll probably move every other meeting for the first 6 or 9 months, which means it's going to take them close to a year to raise rates even 1 full percentage point. That's not rapid, and that's what we need to focus on.
Right. And Joel, really appreciate your time, appreciate your analysis and insight as always. thanks again for being with us and help us try and make some sense of what the
Well, it's
Fed
always
says.
tough to make sense of what the Fed says, but they seem to be coming to a decision, and I hope that they make it, and I hope they make it before the end of this year.
I'm with you on that. Well, folks, that's another edition of Naroff Notes. Thanks again for watching. I'm Tim Sustak. As always, thanks for watching Fine Action.